So I want to talk about operations research and explore what exactly it is, go into a little bit of detail in terms of what I think it actually is. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massac. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out, and I want to pay the favor forward to help you out. So I actually did a master's in management science, which is very much a close relative of operations research. I also did a lot of economics, and my undergrad is in chemical engineering. So I did a lot of economics and sort of finance in graduate school. And the real key difference with operations research is thinking about hard problems, hard real-world problems, and it's a lot more practical than many of the disciplines that are available. So it's very much kind of taking an engineering mindset. It's very much like thinking as an engineer, how do you apply to solve hard, real-world industrial problems? Often it is thinking about bigger corporations in terms of how they solve problems, but it doesn't necessarily have to think about those bigger corporations and how they actually solve problems. The reasons why is that those tend to be profitable areas to do research, and it tends to be a little bit more applied. So, what is going on here? Well, I think a key difference with, say, for example, economics is that economics has very much a defined view of how humans actually work, and it's very much focused on sort of human behavior. And they apply some similar mathematics and things like that, in terms of optimization and think about problems in that sort of way. But it's very distinct in terms of the industrial problems that that you're trying to solve in operations research that are clearly carved out from what you'd actually solve from, say, a chemical engineering background. It might be similar to industrial engineering, but the way that you're thinking about this, or process engineering, the way that you're thinking about it is very hard problems and how to solve these. Maybe it's an algorithm, for example. So you think about different kinds of algorithms, or, how you might actually get from one location to a next, or if you have a series of locations in that you need to get to, how do you do that effectively, as effective as possible? Or maybe, for example, you have an airline, and you need to allocate how quickly they need to stop at each spot to go through and make sure that they hit all the different spots. There's all sorts of really clever and interesting problems that operations research folks actually look at, and they tend to be not necessarily problems that many of the other disciplines look at. And so they have a host of sort of suite of different tools that they use, and it's a lot more quantitative, although it doesn't have to necessarily be purely quantitative in terms of how they view the world, but it's a lot more quantitative than other disciplines, and it's very much thinking of this sort of solving a practical problem and solving how to actually get to some particular direction. That's part of the reason why I actually started the whole Reciprocity project, which is this sort of sharing economy editing platform. So I was thinking about my writing and how everybody writes, or everybody actually does work. And I was like, well, we can apply all sorts of principles and things like that to make it go really easily, and how come we are not doing that? And so that's why I actually built that platform. You can check it out, by the way. Reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. But, the idea is to solve real-world problems that everybody sort of faces that are really tough and difficult to solve, and that wouldn't necessarily be solved without that particular weird discipline, right? That's usually how disciplines kind of emerge, is that nobody else is solving this thing. It doesn't quite fit with how other people are thinking about it, and they have to solve it, right? Like, economics is very not practical often, and people might think that it is very practical, but it's not, right? Like, a lot of it is not practical. It has little practical industrial application often. And, engineering tends to be solving very much industrial processes, but operations research is kind of putting all this kind of stuff together and figuring out how to optimize and making sure that things actually get done efficiently and effectively. Now, do I think that they always have the right answers, or are you going to get the right answers with that? No, I think a big part of, operations research that is missing is very much this qualitative feel, or, thinking about, what they would call as human factors in that particular discipline, or, in the hard sciences, we call it human factors, but it was really like talking about people and how actually people do things. And it's a really hard problem to solve some of these real world practical things that people actually do, because people don't behave in the way that you think that they do. They often don't, and so you have to solve these problems around that and come back and think about that. Now, there's all sorts of things that you can do with operations research, and I think it's actually a really good career to get into if you were to think about that, or discipline to get into, because you're solving practical problems. But at the same time, you got to be more on the quantitative side to think about these, and you have to have a pretty strong quantitative background to do some of these problems. But very much, a lucrative area to go into, but it is so it's lucrative if you get the right position, but sometimes it's hard to find. So it's this problem that it doesn't fit well with a lot of different areas, so people don't understand it, right? It's not quite an MBA or something like that, so people don't understand it. So you have to have a more industrial oriented person that will understand what you actually do. And it's not necessarily that your skills are not useful everywhere. It's just that the whole other people, the way that they perceive you, they don't really understand you. So until that happens, then, it's not going to change that much. But anyways, I think it's a great career. I think it's fun. You're solving tough problems, but at the same time, they are, you're using kind of a systematic, almost like a scientific management approach to solving problems. And if you look at that sort of history, there's all sorts of really interesting things there. So with that, give me a thumbs up, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye.